The Mind Flayers are a species of contradictions and paradox. They are from the ancient past, but also the distant future. They've been brought to the brink of extinction by the violent rebellion and vengeance of their former slaves, and yet are destined to one day rise to such power that they enslave thousands of worlds and millions of intelligent species, which in turn gives rise to the very rebellion which sent them fleeing into the past. To be the Illithids is to experience an eternal Groundhog Day, forever repeating the same span of eons over and over again, but each time devoting all their efforts to figuring out what happened last time and how to do things in a different way this time so that they can not break free of this cycle because they don't want to give up this eternal existence, but learn how to dominate it and repeat the sequence entirely on their own terms. They not only want to dominate the multiverse, they want to ensure that they always did and always will. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the two known gods of the Mind Flayers, which give a lot of insight into the true psyche of these creatures. And we're going to delve into some highly theoretical ideas about what you might choose to weave into your own world building as we discuss some cosmic horror this month. I'll be piecing together the lore on the cult of Thune, where that came from, and introducing some other existential horrors of the Dungeons & Dragons reality, including the Spellweavers and their accidental creation of the astral and outer planes, and the nature of the old ones, the evolution of the gods, and their dread of the mad imprisoned god Tharizdun. This is going to hit very heavy on some fundamental conceptions that you may hold about the nature of the D&D multiverse, but I'll try to ease us into it. But still, strap yourselves in, grab a tasty beverage. We're about to get deeply nerdy. While their nature and very existence are shrouded in horror, what truly deepens the mystery surrounding Mind Flayers is their religious devotion to their dark gods Ilsensine and Manzikorian. Although I'm not going to talk much about Manzikorian because he's recently killed by Orcus, but his worship among the Illithids is an important insight into their psychology, so let's begin with that. The Illithids don't have an origin because they sent themselves from the distant future into the distant past. They just bypassed whatever event caused them to evolve in the first place. From their point of view, they are only concerned with gaining a complete knowledge of the course of events that have already happened, and this includes, again, because their past is their future, knowledge of future events. The artifacts that they brought back from the future with them are not only the most advanced technology they have, they also study every molecule of those ancient artifacts for any knowledge placed on or within them that will reveal things to come on the timeline. The tricky part is, the further into the current future they go, the more their actions diverge from what happened the last cycle that passed through the timeline, and the less accurate their predictions of the future and the current timeline become. This is one reason why Mind Flayers tend to create very secure locations that they confine a lot of their activities to and don't do anything too drastic outside those layers, because the repercussions from that sort of activity can be very disruptive to their ability to predict what happens next. It's easier to see through the clear pool than one obscured by ripples and waves. The religious sects of Manzikorian were central to the obsession with their study of the past in order to better understand, predict, and attempt to change the course of the future, and therefore past events. It's very much like Bill and Ted's Adventures with the Time Machine, where they had that conversation, hey, later on, let's come back to before this happened and put a key to escape this cell in this box here, and then they lift the box to reveal a key was there all along. Would they have escaped without the key? Well, that doesn't really matter anymore because they obviously can escape with the key. And since they have a time machine, they can now go back to make sure the key was under the box before they got locked in the cell and came up with this whole idea. The Mind Flayers do that on an incredibly grand scale with a lot less reliability, but they firmly believe, and it may be, that they are getting better and better at it. So this current reality may be the one where they actually succeed at last and everyone is doomed. Or maybe not. With the death of Manzikorian, this current iteration of time, that was quite a blow to the Illithids' sense that they were finally about to conquer all of reality and time forever. The death of Manzikorian at the hands of Orcus was a terrible miscalculation from their point of view, and a sign that this couldn't possibly be the timeline in which they dominate everything. not with the loss of such a powerful asset. And that brings us to what mind flayers actually think about gods. To the Illithids, gods are not benevolent caretakers or guiding shepherds. Instead, they are cosmic entities of power and knowledge, sources of supremacy to be tapped into and harnessed. The Illithids perceive their gods as a means to enhance their own inherent abilities, and it's true. Their telepathy, mind blasts, and acute psionic awareness flow from Ilsensign, just as their mental power feeds back into the god. So, priests and clerics among the mind flayers don't focus so much on channeling divine power. All the Illithids are doing it anyway. Worshipping Ilsensign and Manzikorian is not a matter of blind faith, but enlightened self-interest. The rituals, ceremonies, and sacrifices dedicated to these deities serve two purposes: to seek their favour and to demonstrate the Illithids' commitment to the path of mental dominance. Furthermore, while the Illithids revere their gods deeply, they do not necessarily view them as all-knowing or omnipotent. Instead, they see them as sources of immense but not absolute power. Their worship revolves around appeasement, veneration, and the extraction of divine gifts. So, if they follow all the rules and do all the things required, they very much expect their god to deliver the power that they seek. By venerating a god that epitomizes mental mastery, the mind flayers reinforce their conviction that their predatory nature and their quest for mental dominance is not just an evolutionary trait, but a divine mandate as well. Mind flayers believe that by pleasing Ilsensign, they can acquire a sliver of the god's immense power, furthering their objective of dominating other species. Also, potentially dangerous competition to the mind flayers does exist. They are not the only species to focus on mental domination, so sharing a common devotion to Ilsensign gives them common ground to become allies rather than enemies. Mind flayers lack a mythical view of the afterlife and the gods of the outer planes, often disbelieving in the idea that they have souls that go there after death, and even when aware, would rather merge with the elder brain than serve Ilsensign after death. In fact, becoming a full priest of Ilsensign is usually at the cost of being excluded from ever having the Illithid's brain extracted and merged with the elder brain when they die. Although Ilsensign, which directly translates as Ilsen, meaning brain, and Sign, meaning great, so brain of the greatest, is often stated to be the creator deity of the mind flayers, this is not accurate. It's more like Ilsensign is the manifested ideal mental overlord that all the egomaniacal psychic dominators most fervently wish they could be and will eventually become. That's the nature of the outer planes, and the mind flayers know the true history of the creation of the outer planes. So, well, here goes. In the true timeline, there was the positive and negative membranes with a flow of the elemental forces rising through an ethereal harmony. Within this flow, the great old ones came into existence and created the prime-material plane, their playground, where they made stars, planets, and created from their minds the realm of dreams. The prime-material worlds are in many ways manifestations in the real of things that existed in their dreams in a state of the surreal. For the great old ones, reality and dream are almost one and the same, such is their incredible power. Their very thoughts are manifested into reality without need of casting divine or arcane magic. There was a gradual process where the old ones became divided into those closer to the positive membrane and those others closer to the negative, and the forces of law and chaos were created. Within the prime material plane, there was a supreme balance between the two, and the old ones concerned themselves with higher dimensional states, not outer planes. Those didn't exist at that point. No, I mean the 6th, 7th, and 8th dimensional states, which treated things like time, probability, and such as a mere direction of movement. The old ones at some point left behind the lower dimensional nest and sealed the way off behind them with a great vortex, preventing any being from going into a higher dimensional state, and preventing the beginning of the multiverse, for instance, from being messed with. Within the prime material plane, one species grew to a state of supreme power for mortal beings, and these were the Spellweavers. Their society was alike like that of the great empire of Netheril, with massive powerful crystal monoliths broadcasting magical power across entire worlds they dominated, providing everything they wanted. There was only the prime dimension, the ethereal plane, the elemental planes, and the inner realm of their dreams. There were no gods, there was no outer planes, no devils, no demons, no abyss, and the far realm was something they were completely unaware of. This was the original and true state of the multiverse and is known as the time of nodes, each node being a spellweaver colony with a great five-sided pyramid of stone and steel more than 500 feet high with a great crystal pulsing with deep blue light at the apex. Within each node was a breeding chamber which contained the magical cylinders necessary for spellweavers to reproduce, a mortuary in which spellweavers entered a stasis every 6 centuries as part of their strange and very long lifespan, and a massive magical furnace they used to create incredible feats of magic. A ring of lesser pyramids surrounded the node. They contained libraries, laboratories, and living quarters, as well as all the portals that created a complex travel network, allowing the spellweavers to travel across the entire prime material plane, very much like stargates. To learn more details about the spellweavers, their activities and goals, their role in the Empire of Netheril, and the incredulous revelation about the mysterious god named Yergel, also, the deep and terrible secrets that the lich god Vecna is keeping from the mortal races, you really should pick up a copy of Eric L. Boyd's masterpiece titled Lord of the End of Everything, a historical treatise on Yergel the Pitiless One. It's available on the DM's Guild. I would say this is required reading for any Forgotten Realms scholar and is very relevant to both the Dead God, Three Gods featured in Baldur's Gate 3 and the recently published Phandelver and Below the Shattered Obelisk, which is excellent, I must say. The Phandelver Adventure Series is certainly a highlight of the official 5th edition products. It's been kind of amusing watching Wizards of the Coast teasing details about the mysterious obelisks when it's been pretty bloody obvious this is all related to the Spellweavers from the get-go, but maybe that's just thanks to me reading so much about Dungeons & Dragons cosmology and the Far Realm weirdness over the years. What I can tell you is that the Spellweavers attempted at some point to transform every member of their species into the equivalent of a god, merging their existence on the prime material plane with their domain within the realm of dreams, or something to that effect. Before they attempted this though, they inscribed a code of reversion psychometrically on an unknown number of gemstones as a safety measure that would allow them to reset reality to the time of nodes, so they could repeat the transformation that they called the Great Disjunction. I know that seems like an odd name for that, what they were trying to achieve, but the result of the ritual was a catastrophic reaction between the realms of dreams and the ethereal plane, creating the entire astral plane, allowing some of the dreams of slumbering old ones to spill into existence, creating far realms of churning nightmare. From there, shortly after, every thought, fable, and belief of mortal thinking beings started to manifest into new realms of existence, and these became the so-called outer, upper, and lower planes of existence. What is very hard to wrap one's head around is that these alterations to reality were retroactive, so all of a sudden species had gods who created them, where from the Spellweaver's point of view the gods had not existed mere moments ago. Unfortunately, the disjunction also caused all the nodes to explode as their arcane furnaces went supercritical and almost every member of the Spellweaver species was exterminated instantly. Only a few of them who were in magical stasis at the time survived, but it seems that their ritual had partially worked, at least in the case of Yergel, who emerged to this insane disaster with a spark of divinity. Sadly, or thankfully, depending on your point of view, the remaining Spellweavers have never managed to gather all the inscribed gemstones back together and therefore can't reset reality back to the time of nodes. If they did manage to do that, they would have to free Tharizdun from his crystal prison, which includes many of the inscribed gemstones as part of its divine construction. The obelisks that remain scattered throughout the prime material plane can still be used to create local reversions, which you can learn about in the Phandelver Shattered Obelisk adventure. So, the Mind Flayers know that they exist in a timeline that is the result of a catastrophic disaster, and they have every intention of making damn sure it not only stays that way, but that they evolve into beings that can totally dominate every aspect of it, ensuring the Spellweavers never, ever reset to the time of nodes. You have to feel for the Spellweavers though, perpetually stuck in a dystopian nightmare with no way to fix it without releasing a mad god who wants to destroy it all and start from the original state of pure chaos. But we will talk more in depth about Tharizdun, astral dreadnoughts, beholders, the far realm, celestial old ones, the abyss, and how to get rid of it forever in the next video. Meanwhile, let's learn some more about Ilsensine, the Great Brain. A common practice, and probably the only time a non-illithid will see any sort of prayer or religious ritual from the Mind Flayers, is the way they trace the symbol of Ilsensine from leftover ichor after consuming a particularly delicious brain. Otherwise, all prayers to the deity are entirely silent, performed telepathically, with all face tentacles held perfectly still as a sign of respect, so it's easy to miss. Aside from a cult called the Unworthy of Ilsensine located under the Giants Run Mountains along the Dragon Coast that was trying to infiltrate the city of Westgate, the primary location of concern for Ilsensine on Tyrell is the Mind Flayer city of Arindel, where there's many shrines dedicated to him there, which is something you generally do not see in other illithid colonies unless there has been direct interaction with that colony by an avatar of the god. So, if we go to the Forgotten Realms wiki page, it gives a great rundown on the history of Ilsensine's activity on Tyrell. Unfortunately, we know very little about the faith on planet Glyph, even when and where Ilsensine came from. It could be any point in history. For the Mind Flayers, that doesn't matter, of course. In Arindel, there is a secret undervault level to the city that is extremely difficult to gain access to. You have to know exactly where it is, as entry involves phasing through solid rock. Anyway, within these chambers are numerous great thought basins, vats full of encephalic fluid that is psionically charged, supercharged, with vast amounts of information. The city of Arindel is known as the City of Lawtakers and has been in existence for over 12,000 years. This is the city that created the Duergar dwarves, the lizard folk illithids called the Sarkandi, the roper illithids called the Urophions, and the shadow-infused Sverfneblin gnome illithids called the Morgrikan, as well as countless other experimental and often unstable ceremorph mutants. The elder brain in the heart of Arindel is called the Encephalithid, and is an ancient and stupendously powerful psionic being on a level beyond any entities short of a god on Tyrell, and instead of ruling the entire city, works with the Elder Concord, a group formed of exclusively Ulatharid Creedmasters. Each is currently working toward a fairly recent discovery that all the Elder Brains on Tyrell will merge with Ulatharids to create a grand Elder Concord that will rule the entire planet. This was discovered by Thalinsar the Ulathara Tarch, according to Dristu Erden's Guide to the Underdark. When this will happen is now unknown, but Tyrell has been the scene of some very unusual activity of Ilsensine. Ilsensine first directly intervened in Arindel just after the Duergar slave rebellion 5,496 years ago, manifesting as a glowing 8-foot, 2.4 meter green glowing brain with 2 agile tentacles that was a bit smaller than the 10-foot massive Encephalithid. At the time, it seemed like the god's avatar was somehow summoned by the Elder Brain, but I'm not sure that is what happened. Arindel now became a sacred site for the faith of Ilsensine, so much so that the priests and clerics of Ilsensine were permitted to merge with Encephalithid on their death, and psionic science developed into many innovations. Also, something was altered in the Mind Flayer brine pool, and the spawn rate of Ulatharids became very high. 138 years ago, during the Time of Troubles, Ilsensine manifested in Arindel again, this time merging directly with Encephalithid, directly as a host body, which caused the ancient Elder Brain to grow 2 agile tentacles as a consequence of its physical manifestation. It also stimulated the minds of the resident illithids. This further increased the influence of the priests and clerics known as the Venerators, making Seraphalosk, the Creedmaster of the Venerators, the most powerful political individual save the Elder Brain itself. The mental stimulation also saw the Lawtaker Creed renew their assaults on surface law holdings, raiding libraries and the lair of a fair number of Lich Lords, and caused a burst of creative energy that resulted in the creation of new technologies and new psychic items and more psionic disciplines from the Creative Creed. Shortly after, a group of illithids went on a pilgrimage right into the Forbidden Caverns of Thought, which housed the brine pool of Encephalithid, now radically altered thanks to serving as the host body of Ilsensine. Whatever was said or seen in that chamber is unknown.
but we know that there is a huge wall within Arindel where the telekinetic emanations of the god created a nightmare-inducing pattern that the Illithids have been studying intently for decades now. When those adventuring pilgrims returned, they were devoted followers of something called Thune, which was deemed heretical by the Orthodox clergy and saw them exiled. It is unknown exactly what Thune is, but if you ask me, I think it is the destiny of Mind Flayers to not only discover the secrets of the Spellweaver crystals of reversion, but rather than be stopped in their tracks by the inevitable release of the mad god Therastone, the Mind Flayers will find a way to convert the super-powerful deity to their cause, and through the crystals and the mad god, transform the multiverse into a terrible empire that they have always known must eventually come. This would, well, what would this nightmare really look like? Well, that's the subject of the next video this month. Meanwhile, there is some issue with Ulsensign having lost a shard of its incredible intellect somewhere in the sands of the coast of Sembia, but exactly what that is all about is something I have yet to look into. Also, once again, if you want to bring a lot of this cosmic horror to your gaming group, pick up the new Phandelver adventure. It's very good. Thanks for joining me today. I'll be back with more for you, as always, very soon.